All right, we've talked about YouTube, we've talked about Instagram. Now let's pause and talk about a way how you can have your content out there and still have full control over it. Because, as I mentioned many times, you're a guest when you do business on YouTube, you're a guest when you do business on Instagram. But if you have your own website, a blog, or a newsletter, you're in full control. So let's talk about that because it's much easier to sleep at night when you know you own your own following, followers, email addresses, visits, and so forth. It's all yours. So let's start with the obvious thing. Full control. It's important for many different reasons, so I don't really get into it too much. But again, how I said you should build your own journey. If you're one of those people who really like to have full control over everything and make sure nothing ever goes wrong that's out of your control, then have your own website or newsletter, both. I'm uncomfortable, I have to admit, having a YouTube channel that's my main income source that I know I can lose in the morning for no reason sometimes. Weirder things have happened. But if you have a website or newsletter, which I now do as well, you remember how we talked about kind of strengthening your empire, building other social media platforms around your main source of income. So at some point, if you even pick YouTube or Instagram or another way to make money, your own website, your own blog, your own newsletter is very important. All right. So the good news, you have full control, of course. But the bad news is that you are on your own. Some people love it, some people hate it, but there is third-party help. For example, if you're building a website, there are a lot of different ways how you can do it without having almost any knowledge about how to web develop. And WordPress is probably the most favorite and definitely one of the most popular one out there. And it's basically a platform, a sort of software that you install on your server. Or a lot of times, if you go with GoDaddy or other web providers, they will already have it installed for you and maintain it for you. Remember how I said you're on your own? If you have your own server and you install WordPress and there's an update, you need to do it on your own. You're gonna have to either do it yourself or find somebody else who will do it for you, and of course you'll have to pay them money. So, but WordPress is great because there are tons and tons of developers who develop templates, right? So you can find a template, say, I want a website for somebody who owns a yoga studio. And there will be tons of templates that will have the features and the look and many other things that you would want to feature on your yoga website, including some stock pictures and a way for you to customize it. And it's great. It will look great in any browser, on your phone, on different kinds of phone platforms like Android and Apple OS. So it's kind of all preset for you because people sell them in large amounts and they spend a lot of time. And because obviously they make good income, a lot of people do it full time as well. So whenever they develop a template, it's not just for you, it's for so many other people that they get paid enough to continuously maintain. And whenever a new browser version comes out or a new mobile browser version comes out, they make the appropriate changes so your website continues to look good as the years go by. A lot of times the templates are really not that expensive. You can spend anywhere from $20 to maybe tops $100. The only thing is, WordPress is not easy to understand and get into. There is the learning curve is kind of steep. It's not, obviously it's still much simpler than web development, but nevertheless. But hey, there's YouTube out there where you can go and learn it. There are tons of meetup groups, especially if you live in a large metropolitan area, especially in the United States. There are meetups where you can go and people will help you and you can learn relatively quickly. But WordPress is one of the ways how you can create your website relatively painlessly and for very little money. Of course, don't forget there's Fiverr out there and freelance websites where you can just hire somebody to do it for you. Not as expensive as if you were to actually hire a web developer, but you would still have to spend money, but at the same time, you will save yourself a lot of time. Now, ActiveCampaign, for example, is an example of a newsletter distribution software, and there's tons of them there. And this is the one that I use particularly. But once again, please go ahead and research what is the best for you. For example, there's MailChimp. It's very popular. You'll probably come across that software as soon as you start Googling. But if you do affiliate marketing, they're not very friendly to that. As a matter of fact, you might get kicked out one day if they feel like you're breaking their rules. So you need to find one that will cater to your needs. Much like with WordPress, WordPress is not the only solution for your website. WordPress is one of many. There's Wix, for example, Wix.com. They've probably seen commercials, especially on YouTube, where you can come in and you don't need to be installing and getting templates and everything. It's kind of a very simple. You will see the templates. You will be able to easily manipulate things, and you don't need to know all of this WordPress stuff. Same thing with newsletters. ActiveCampaign, again, it's something that I prefer. I like their user interface and the features that they have is pretty much everything that I need. But newsletters are getting very complicated nowadays. It's not just, hey, get a bunch of email addresses and just send them all out. No, a lot of times you can customize an experience for a group of people who sign up for your newsletter, and it gets really really complicated. There are funnels, there's a lot of different logic in which way which newsletter template gets sent out to what kind of customers. It is very very complicated. There are also a lot of different laws that govern the way emails get sent out nowadays, and so you have to, they'll help you of course, but you have to conform to that. And so what you need to do, obviously use Google. There will be lists of different software that are being offered out there for newsletter marketing or just sending out newsletter. Make sure to look for, first of all, pricing. The pricing will definitely depend on how many emails you're planning on sending out per month. So you obviously want to start with a smaller package, but they also want to make sure that as you scale, your wallet can scale along with it, because those dollars add up pretty quickly as those emails add up as well. You want to make sure that they have a filter where if people are not opening your email or they're bouncing back, you want to get rid of those to make sure that you're not paying as much money for sending those out those emails that never get opened, right? But at the same time, make sure that it's not complicated enough where you're just gonna struggle and be frustrated when you're setting them up. But at the same time, make sure that this system will scale. So if you do decide to go the route of automation, as it's called, where you want to automate how these emails go to different types of users and customers, then make sure to pick one where it is possible. You can always switch. You can always take and export all of your email addresses, names, and so forth, and go and import it into another system. But of course, it's a bit of a pain, and you do have to learn another system with a different user interface and so forth. But unlike YouTube or Instagram, you own your customer base. Remember, we talked about full control. Well, you have full control, and that's where you need to concentrate on. All right, so for example, Kajabi is another example. This is where I host this course. There were other platforms that I looked at where you could just host a class or course, and that's all they do. But for example, Kajabi, I picked it because they have sort of three-in-one package. They obviously can host this course on their servers, but at the same time, they, much like WordPress or Wix, they've provided me with an ability to create a website, and the templates that they've already had were specifically for those who prefer to sell their courses online. And thirdly, they already have this newsletter feature built in. It's not as robust as ActiveCampaign. I use my ActiveCampaign one for my YouTube channel, but here it has all the features that you need to run your own online course as a digital product. And so I picked this solution because it was much simpler to get into, even though it's the most expensive solution. But I figured time versus money. Remember we talked about it in the beginning? And again, I can't tell you which one to pick, because in my case, I have a little bit of extra money, so I can invest into something, and I don't have as much time. So to me, exchanging money for time was a very acceptable solution. But if you're just starting out, well, gee, then you might want to pay with your time rather than with your money. So the key is to do your own research and to make sure you pick the service that's right for you. I'm even afraid to just give you, let's say, top 5 list of newsletter providers or website templates or systems, because I don't want you to be limited to that. Because what if your business needs a certain one little thing that only one or two services out there provide, and they don't make my list? If I will just give you this list and you will end up picking out of the options that, where none of them are good for you. That would be disservice to you. So please create your own journey. Please make sure to research the services that are good for you. And again, only you can figure out time, money, what the balance is there, the learning curve. Like some people learn faster, some people can't learn as fast, and it's so custom to you that only you can pick the right journey for yourself. Now, reading versus watching, right? And obviously, when you have a blog or a newsletter, it's all about people reading it. And, more and more people are watching rather than reading, and that's just how it is. However, reading is still a big part of it, a big part of our culture. And people who read, a lot of times they pay more attention. So if you're selling something to them, they're more likely to buy. And also, who else reads? Google. When Google indexes your blog or your website, the more content you have, the more text you have, the more the Google can recognize, oh, this article is about this, or this blog is about that, this whole website about this. So as you write more and more, you help Google to help you find readers for your blog or a website. Now, again, remember how we talk about having full control, but also kind of being on your own? Well, with YouTube and Instagram, there's a discovery sort of luxury, something that's already built in. When you have your own website, you're the only one who's going to be promoting it. And this is where you have to rely on what's called SEO, search engine optimization. You want to make sure that Google finds out about your website and about your blog. And then there are quite a few different things, and they always change, that you need to make sure you keep up with to make sure that Google likes you, that it indexes you, it indexes you correctly, maybe puts it above other competitors and other articles and blogs in the same industry, in the same niche. And there are people who make money just on that. They do SEO consulting, and sometimes sometimes people will struggle and say, well, I've done everything correctly as far as SEO is concerned, and my website still doesn't rank very high. And it could be a matter of how fast your website loads in a browser. If it loads for 5 or 6 or 7 seconds, and your competitor website loads in 2 and 3, well, you're gonna keep losing to them all the time. And a lot of times it's not a matter of the website design or a template, and sometimes you're limited by the template, where you have to start digging somewhere into really like ones and zeros on your server to figure out how to serve your website faster. And you can get into some really complicated software development, again, either something that you have to learn or pay a lot of money, or at least some money to hire somebody to do it for you. You're on your own, and this is where I just want to make sure that you understand the risk versus reward. Again, your decision, but don't forget, blogs and newsletters is something that you might want to look into. And in the future, once again, if you pick YouTube or Instagram or something else, this is something that you might want to think up front, especially with a newsletter. It's not that hard to set one up, and it's not that hard to promote it in your videos. So if anything, I would recommend the newsletter to be one of the first things that you think about, besides the main social media platform that you're going to pick.